7. Bruce and Bernie discuss the family conflicts. This scene, set in Bruce and Bernadette's bedroom as they debrief the day's crisis, stands as an intimate anatomy of exhausted parenthood and fractured domestic hope in the King's Omen. Williams employs alternating perspectives and interruptions, cutting back and forth between rooms and arguments, to weave together a tapestry of regret, blame, anxiety, and, beneath the noise, determined love. The scene is masterful in how it channels the larger themes of the novel into the most private space, the marital bed. Scene structure and flow. The narrative oscillates between the couple's conversation and Katrina's intimidation of Caleb in another room, paralleling parental guilt with the children's own psychological wars. Inside the bedroom, Bruce and Bernie confront their collective failure. In Caleb's room, the siblings reenact cycles of manipulation and resentment that mirror adult dysfunction. Williams uses this dual structure to emphasize that every generation echoes, but rarely overcomes, the traumas of the last. The dialogue flows between accusation and confession, sarcasm and genuine pain. The rhythm is informal, tense, yet threaded with intimacy. These are two people who can only speak openly in moments of defeat. Character and emotional dynamics. Bruce Edwards. Bruce's emotional arc here is revealed in his defensive and self-deprecating banter. Confronted by Thurman's counsel and Bernie's sadness for Roland, Bruce's response oscillates between self-blame and determination. He demonstrates a familiar male pride. It's not too late to reach him, yet must admit, painfully, his ignorance about Roland's likes and needs. Bruce's tone toward Katrina, the evil one, is both comic and tragic, showing how deeply enmeshed he is in cycles of alienation. His inability to express hope for her, instead deflecting with anger and judgment, stands in contrast to his more gentle approach to Roland's pain. It demonstrates his tendency to retreat to the comfort of blaming over confronting. This pattern is echoed later in his justification for exploding at Mr. Stewart. Bruce insists his anger is righteous, but Bernie rightly points out that his emotional volatility stifles resolution. Gesture, notably, plays a huge role in expressing Bruce's interior struggles, covering his face with the blanket, sighing, clutching at Bernie's hand, all convey an exhaustion that words alone can't capture. It's the physical embodiment of the psychic labor involved in parenting under stress. Bernadette, Bernie. Bernie's emotional landscape is also exposed. Her dialogue moves from regret to hope, from defensive rationalization to careful self-awareness. She is the more pragmatic of the two, willing to try anything for Aurora's health, even if it goes against Bruce's principles. Bernie is open about her errors, asking Bruce for advice and admitting that their neglect of Roland is sad. Yet, she is also quick to defend Katrina and mediate between Bruce's anger and the reality of their daughter's severe flaws. Bernie's role is to balance Bruce's heat with her own measured coolness. Her holding his hand and removing the blanket at the end is an act of emotional grounding amid chaos. The exchange is tender and understated, a moment of connection between two failing parents who nonetheless cannot quit caring. Katrina and Caleb. While the parent scene unfolds, Kat's intimidating presence in Caleb's room strengthens the theme of cyclical familial aggression. Kat's threatening, manipulative dialogue, Dad's room is just 3 feet away. Then you'll have to share the attic with Ms. Crazy Pants, shows how the logic of power and shame is already taking root in the next generation. Caleb's project, broken and scattered, mimics his own internal state and the family's. Williams draws a direct line from parental dysfunction to sibling cruelty. Thematic dimensions. Familial cycles and legacy. The scene makes clear that cycles of neglect, anger, and overwork are handed from parent to child, consciously and unconsciously. Despite Bruce's determination and Bernie's pragmatism, their pain manifests as defensive banter. The madness in this household is both a fact and a curse, something they can name but not escape. Parenthood and emotional illiteracy. Both Bernie and Bruce recognize their ignorance about Roland, a devastating truth, but also the real heart of the scene. Their admission, Have we been wrapped up that much in our own madness that we've lost all human contact with our kids? Transforms guilt into the possibility for change. William suggests that healing begins with this vulnerable confession: anger, blame, and survival. The verbal assaults, Bruce on Bernie, Cat on Caleb, are symptoms of survival mechanisms twisted by stress and pride. Bruce's monologues, filled with justification and bitterness, good job, that's great, curse the man out who gives our son his grades, reveal the ways men in the Edwards family protect their dignity at all costs, often to the detriment of connection and grace. Economic and healthcare anxiety. The subplot about Aurora's medication exposes anxieties about poverty and parental responsibility. Bruce's refusal to accept charity or free medicine is consistent with his pride everywhere else. He wants healing, but on his own terms, fearing dependency even in the context of his daughter's health. Bernie's counterpoint, that help from others might be precisely what they need, reflects the tension between autonomy and interdependence. Momentary connection amid despair. The closing tableau, Bruce and Bernie holding hands, staring silently, serves as a rare, fragile moment of connection. Amid their failures and anxieties, they choose not to retreat into blame or deflection, but to acknowledge each other's effort. Williams allows this tenderness to exist only briefly before the next crisis inevitably erupts. Symbolic and visual motifs. The bedroom is both prison and sanctuary. It's a place of reckoning, but also the only refuge left. Blanket gestures and hand-holding emphasize a desire for protection and comfort, even if only symbolic. The Broken Science project operates as a visual metaphor for Caleb's, and by extension, the household's, internal fragmentation. Narrative placement and long-term implications. This scene synthesizes everything prior: the guilt from the school counselor, the fury at the science teacher, the unhealed wounds among the siblings. Here, Bruce and Bernie name the damage without resolving it. Their vow to try again with Roland is an act of hope, but also an acknowledgement of how far they've fallen from genuine connection. The promise to take Roland out echoes Bruce's earlier attempts at redemption. The Saturday plan is more plea than promise. Meanwhile, the subplot with Katrina and Caleb forecast further trouble ahead. Her manipulations and threats signal that the next generation will be caught in the same web of secrecy and aggression. Bernie's insistence on taking Aurora to the fair and Bruce's cyclical resistance reinforce that parental choices are often negotiations between necessity and idealism. Final emotional note. The closing moment, silent hand-holding, shared exhaustion, stands as one of Williams's most honest depictions of love under pressure. There is no idealization here, just two flawed people, battered by circumstance and their own histories, releasing blame long enough to recognize effort. In The King's Omen, such moments are fleeting but sacred. 8. The Bobby Ross hit. This scene unfolds with a dense atmosphere of tension, moral conflict, and psychological pressure, deeply exploring the characters of Cleotis and Cecil within their fraught familial and criminal context. The narrative builds layers of emotional complexity and ethical ambiguity while maintaining a detailed focus on environment, posture, dialogue, and internal states, all without needing to explicitly depict the violent acts themselves. Setting and mood. From the moment Cleotis and Cecil arrive at Bobby Ross's residence, the scene is charged with foreboding. The house, occupied by a family including Bobby's wife and child, transforms the setting into a crucible where personal lives collide with the harsh demands of street loyalty. The presence of the family humanizes the space, creating an invisible boundary of innocence and vulnerability that weighs heavily on Cleotis's conscience. The house itself, with its new toys, carpet, and Christmas decorations, stands in stark contrast to the weight of the impending actions. This juxtaposition deepens the sense that life and normality persist even as underlying threats encroach, framing the domestic environment as a fragile sanctuary imperiled by forces beyond control. Character dynamics and emotional detail. Cleotis's psychological state. Cleotis is portrayed as thoughtful, burdened, and distracted, his gaze drifting into another universe, suggests a mind wrestling with guilt, fear, and resignation. His verbal hesitations and expressions of discomfort, I still have a bad feeling about this. This don't sit right with me, render him empathetic and human, bearing the emotional weight of their assignment more acutely than his brother. Throughout the scene, Cleotis's tone and physical behavior convey his struggle between duty and morality. His attempts to de-escalate situations, urging Cecil to avoid making a scene and warning about attention from law enforcement, reflect a strategic mindset aimed at minimizing collateral damage, even if that's doomed to fail. He balances the demands of the criminal hierarchy with his internal ethical boundary, which he frequently tests and almost crosses. Cecil's contrasting persona. In sharp relief, Cecil is impulsive, provocatively confident, and unencumbered by moral qualms. His open dismissal of Cleotis's worries, I ain't got time for your sentimental bull, and his eager, brash engagement with the task display a reckless survivalism driven by immediate gain and thrill. Cecil's actions and words reveal a complex psychology. He equates violence with vitality, pride, and manhood. His verbal taunts, expressions of dominance, and disregard for the emotional devastation unfolding around him underscore his alienation from conventional empathy. The references to their childhood and lessons from their father expose a cycle of violence passed down as a warped form of education. Dialogue and internal conflict. The dialogue between the brothers is highly charged with subtext. Cecil's taunting remarks and boasts reveal his thrill-seeking nature, while Cleotis's repeated attempts to curb excess expose his deeper contemplation of consequences. The men's conversational rhythm shifts effortlessly between negotiation, accusation, and almost tender remembrances, capturing the oscillation between brotherly bond and fracturing conflict. Cecil's interactions with the family inside the house, especially the wife and child, introduce a cruel dichotomy of power and vulnerability. His disregard for their presence and pleas highlights his detachment from empathy, contrasting with Cleotis's growing discomfort and desire to finish the job quickly and quietly. Cleotis's internal struggle becomes palpable when he interrupts, asserting orders to hurry up and de-escalate, revealing tension not only with external risks but with his own blood. The escalating impatience and frustration illustrate the corrosive nature of their environment and lifestyle, loyalty to bosses competing with innate human revulsion. Symbolic and psychological layers. Domestic space as battleground. The intimate setting, a family home decorated for the holidays, symbolizes innocence and continuity. The intrusion of criminal business into this space represents a tragic disruption of normalcy, emphasizing the high stakes and moral degradation enveloping all characters. Fractured brotherhood. The contrast between Cecil and Cleotis embodies wider themes of loyalty fractured by divergent values. Cecil's pursuit of thrills and dominance contrasts with Cleotis's fading resolve, revealing a sibling relationship strained under external pressures and internal shame. Their interaction dramatizes the tension between impulse and conscience. Silence and sound. Though detailed description of violence is withheld, the well-placed sensory references, the echoes of screams, the sighs of agony, the pounding presence of physical intimidation serve as background noise that amplifies psychological claustrophobia. This sonic layering connects to Cleotis's subjective experience, where external chaos envelopes internal fragmentation. The burden of responsibility. Cleotis's eventual snapping, his physical outburst on Cecil, symbolizes the breaking point where suppressed guilt, helplessness, and frustration explode. This moment crystallizes the theme of powerlessness amidst chaos, a man who cannot reconcile his actions with his identity. Cinematic and narrative tone. The pacing of the scene is carefully managed, with long moments of internal reflection interrupted by sudden shifts in action and dialogue intensity. This ebb and flow replicate the unstable psychological terrain navigated by the characters. The visual details, Cecil smirking, The stained carpet, the scattered toys, the closed doors create a tableau that implies horror while focusing on mood and reaction. Cleotis's body language, the way his mind turns to slow motion as screams echo, presents a cinematic depiction of trauma delayed and deferred. Thematic importance. This scene exemplifies the novel's core exploration of cycles of violence, how personal restraint can dissolve in the face of inherited expectation and relentless environment. It deepens the narrative's investigation of morality compromised by survival, kinship tainted by brutality, and the impossibility of escape from systemic ruin. Cleotis is positioned not merely as an actor, but as a witness to the self-destruction of his family and the moral decay of his own soul. His inability to fully control or stop Cecil reflects the breakdown of authority within the Edwards-Marcelin line and sets the stage for Bruce's later struggles with his own legacy. 9. Old man Bruce forgives the reporter and continues the interview. The scene vividly captures a tense and revealing moment during an interview between Bruce Edwards and a persistent reporter, providing deep insight into Bruce's family history and the complex moral landscape of the Edwards and Marcelin families. Setting and tone. The setting is intimate and tense. Bruce, frail and recently wheeled back into his home by his assistant, resumes dialogue with the reporter who remains firm and unyielding. Bruce's initially defensive mood softens into a mix of regret, pride, and heavy responsibility as he recounts family lore. The exchange is punctuated by moments of pain and humor, underscored by the weight of history and unspoken trauma. Bruce's gaze, initially hardened, shifts to one of reluctant understanding and eventual confession. His tone is measured but emotionally charged, each detail carrying the weight of years of violence, loyalty, and loss. Key narrative points and details. Family loyalty and lines of business. The reporter prompts Bruce to revisit the brutal killing of Bobby Ross, Dion's cousin, by the Marcelin misfits. Bruce differentiates between Mr. Marcelin and Cecil, portraying Marcelin as the pragmatic and shrewd architect who saw violence as a necessary tool to maintain order, while casting Cecil as a wild, pleasure-driven psychopath indifferent to consequence or strategy. This contrast frames the brothers' roles in both business and violence. Individual roles and personalities. Bruce vividly profiles each Marcelin brother. Caesar, more focused on material gain, avoiding violence. Clavon, a consistent failure, prone to major mistakes. Charles, Chunky Charlie, the family's self-assured strategist, though arrogant and somewhat naive, eager to impress Cleotis. Lysandra, intellectual powerhouse and real consigliera, surpassing even Charles in influence and cunning. These detailed character sketches add density and realism, transforming the Marcelins into a family of distinct but intertwined personalities shaped by crime and survival. Bruce's relationship with the Marcelins. Bruce reveals complex emotions, expressing respect and admiration for Mr. Marcelin as a surrogate father figure, while also harboring hatred for Cecil's destructiveness. This ambivalence highlights the difficulty of navigating love and loyalty in corrupted family systems. Historical and social context. The scene portrays the escalating violence in Cleveland's criminal world, with brutal power struggles involving figures such as Rogelio Rodriguez, James Jackson, and Frankie Morrow, the undercover cop. Bruce's stories capture a city gripped by shifting alliances, betrayals, and a war that obliterates innocence. Angela Edwards' role and suffering. Bruce discusses his mother's injury and her pragmatic yet hard-edged engagement with the drug trade. Her loss of an eye symbolizes personal sacrifice amidst relentless violence. Despite initial bitterness, she agrees to mentor Mr. Marcelin, reflecting the complex interplay between resentment and survival in their world. Unresolved paternity and emotional distance. Bruce's acknowledgement of never knowing his father adds a personal dimension of loss and uncertainty. His guardedness around this issue suggests deep wounds that ripple through his narrative, reflecting themes of identity, absence, and inherited trauma. Nickname and reputation. The conversation about the formation of Cleotis's nickname, Leo the Blade, and his selective executioner skills with knives adds texture to the violent world they inhabit. Bruce's description humanizes Cleotis by associating his violent methods with culinary skill, juxtaposing artistry and brutality. Descriptive and symbolic elements. The narration is rich with vivid contrasts. Violence versus business. Murder is portrayed as a calculated action to preserve an enterprise, a grim necessity rather than gratuitous cruelty. Family versus industry. Siblings embody competing motivations, greed, loyalty, incompetence, humanizing the criminal enterprise. Injury and loss. Angela's eye injury and the deaths of important figures punctuate the narrative with a sense of cost and sacrifice. Nicknames as identity, Leo the Blade reflects how reputation and mythologizing define these men, blending fear with dark charisma. Bruce's delivery is both narrative and confessional, mixing storytelling with poignant glimpses into his own pain and hesitation. Thematic insights. Legacy and moral complexity. The scene emphasizes the tangled web of loyalty, violence, and family ties. Good and evil are not absolutes, but shaded by necessity, history, and personal choices. Power and survival. The hierarchy within the Marcelin family mirrors feudal structures, where personal ambition collides with collective loyalty and survival instincts. Identity and absence. Bruce's reflections on his unknown father and surrogate relationships reflect deep human desires for connection and belonging amid chaos. Violence as language. Murder and brutality are not random, but communicative acts, messages, warnings, and rituals to maintain power and control. Conclusion. This scene serves as a crucial narrative and emotional node within the King's Omen. It bridges personal history and broader crime dynamics, revealing the human cost behind mythic criminal operations. Bruce's candid retelling offers rich, nuanced insights into family dynamics, moral ambiguity, and the relentless survivalism that shapes the Edwards and Marcelin legacies. 10. The Edwards family chaos. This scene masterfully combines tension, vulnerability, and emotional complexity to deepen the portrayal of the Edwards family dynamics in The King's Omen. Through Roland's covert cigarette smoking and the tender exchange between Bruce and Aurora, Williams juxtaposes youthful recklessness and innocence, highlighting the cyclical nature of trauma and hope within the fractured family. Roland's secretive act, symbolism, and psychological undercurrents. Roland's cautious intrusion into Bruce's room and his fumbling attempts with the cigarette pack are intricately detailed, revealing his desire for autonomy and rebellion within a suffocating domestic environment. The slow, almost reverent manner in which he retrieves the cigarette and lighter, with vigilant glances around the dimly lit room, captures a moment of dangerous curiosity and youthful vulnerability. The visual focus on the flickering flame acts as a metaphor for Roland's precarious grasp on control and the allure of self-destruction. His repeated coughing and hesitation to exhale the smoke reflect both physical inexperience and deeper emotional choking, suggesting he is overwhelmed by forces larger than himself, whether internal or external. The smoke's slow drift and the triggering of the alarm signal the moment when private rebellion spills into unavoidable exposure, mirroring how hidden family tensions inevitably surface. Roland's startled, wide-eyed reaction to the alarm's piercing sound crystallizes a deer in headlights moment, an epicenter of fear and consequence. His frantic concealment of the cigarette and rapid retreat underscore the precarious balance he maintains between seeking independence and fearing punishment. Domestic chaos and parental struggles. The alarm's blaring summons the family's fractured attention, compelling Bernie to interrupt her cooking and ascend stairs with a pillow to quell the noise. Williams realistically renders parental exhaustion, the concession that children's antics disrupt fragile routines, requiring sacrificial intervention. Caleb's melancholy figure, dragging himself through the room, symbolizes the emotional gravity settling over the household. His subdued presence contrasts with the chaos, embodying the heavy weight of damaged hope and emerging adolescent disengagement. Bernie's knock on Kat's door and ensuing conversation reveal the brittle state of sibling relationships and household discipline. Kat, isolated and resentful, defiantly refuses to join the family outing, her punishment underscoring estrangement and unresolved conflict. Bernie's tentative invitation and acknowledgement of Kat's sharp retort articulate the parents' dilemmas between authority, empathy, and fractured family ties. The artistic exchange, Aurora and Bruce's emotional connection. Transitioning from the noisy domestic bustle to a quieter, more intimate space, the scene shifts focus to Bruce's interaction with Aurora. This segment brims with emotional resonance, capturing the rare moments when love and vulnerability surface in the Edwards household. Aurora's dedication to her art, her constant, almost compulsive drawing, represents a vital outlet for her inner world, a visual narrative of trauma, hope, and isolation. Bruce's admiration and gentle speech reflect a tender paternal instinct amid the narrative's harshness. His observation that you can see beauty in anything if you fix your eyes the right way connects deeply with the novel's themes of perception and resilience. The specific drawing of the four kings and the little boy serves as a symbolic focal point. Its description, tragic, evocative, open to interpretation, mirrors the family's fractured reality. Bruce's tearful reaction to the drawing reveals his emotional barriers cracking. The image stirs buried pain and complex paternal fears. Aurora's invitation to Bruce to share his interpretation fosters a moment of genuine communication, where art becomes a bridge connecting fractured souls. Aurora's perception of loneliness juxtaposed with the tragic fate of the kings deepens the scene's symbolism, emphasizing themes of isolation, responsibility, and the cyclical nature of suffering. Visual and emotional layering in Bruce's observation. Bruce's attention to Aurora's ongoing, incomplete drawing of a drowning man beneath the reflection of a family on water visually prefigures the novel's core themes of drowning in familial dysfunction and the fragility of identity reflected through relationships. This poignant imagery encapsulates the sense of being overwhelmed by inherited trauma while seeking connection and meaning. Thematic depth and narrative function. This scene intertwines numerous important themes. Youthful rebellion and vulnerability. Roland's cigarette smoking is a quiet act of defiance unto itself, laden with risk and signaling the perilous passage from childhood innocence to premature exposure to adult vices. Family fracture and discipline. The fragmented interactions among the children and parents reveal ongoing struggles with authority, punishment, and alienation, illustrating how conflict, neglect, and misunderstanding perpetuate household dysfunction. Art as expression and connection. Aurora's drawings emerge as more than pastime. They are symbolic acts of processing trauma and communicating emotions too difficult to express verbally. Bruce's interaction with her art opens paths for emotional healing and deeper understanding. Isolation and hope. Despite the heaviness, brief moments of affection and shared vulnerability highlight the tiniest glimmers of hope within a household overshadowed by pain. Cinematic and sensory detailing. Williams uses sensory elements to heighten atmosphere, the flicker of the lighter's flame, the escape of smoke curling into the hallway, the piercing shriek of the alarm, and the warmth of a bedside light on drawings. These details build immersive suspense and emotional intimacy alike. The parallel movement from physical chaos, Roland's smoking and alarm, to quiet emotional gravity, Bruce and Aurora's connection, mirrors narrative oscillations between external turmoil and internal reflection. Conclusion. In essence, this scene richly layers descriptive detail to portray internal and external tensions within the Edwards family. Roland's secret cigarette act symbolizes dangerous adolescence amidst neglect. The alarm's disturbance commands fractured attention. Sibling conflicts and fractured parenting reveal deep familial fractures. And the tender father-daughter dialogue over Aurora's drawings embodies fleeting emotional connection in a household marked by pain. Williams blends evocative imagery, psychological depth, and symbolic art to encapsulate the fragile human bonds struggling to endure amid trauma. 10.1. This part of the scene delves deep into the strained yet tender dynamics within the Edwards family, revealing the multifaceted struggles of parenting, sibling relationships, and emotional connection in the King's Omen. Through nuanced dialogue and rich descriptive detail, Williams illustrates both the challenges and fragile moments of love that define this family. Family tensions and character interactions. Bruce's interaction with Bernie and their children captures the underlying fractures in their relationships. His frustration at Kat's refusal to join the family outing and Caleb's reluctance to attend the science fair highlight the emotional distance and rebellion simmering within the children. Bruce's role as the determined, authoritative father contrasts with Bernie's more empathetic, nurturing approach, showcasing the gender divisions in parenting styles under stress. Caleb's sarcasm and despair expose his vulnerability and fear of failure, while Bruce's firm encouragement to toughen up oscillates between motivation and the risk of perpetuating the cycle of aggression and survivalism taught within the family. Bruce's advice about standing up for oneself, though intended as empowering, also reveals the harsh realities and coping mechanisms imposed by their environment. Bernie and Kat's playful yet poignant interaction over the laptop and the old video of Bernie singing adds emotional depth. It creates a moment of genuine connection, bridging generational gaps and reminding both mother and daughter of shared vulnerabilities. The choice of Love Don't Live Here Anymore, as the song symbolizes the emotional voids yet to be filled, while the mutual recognition of pain and resilience offers a glimmer of hope. Themes and emotional undercurrents. Parental struggle and division of roles. Bruce embodies the traditionally rigid, protective father figure struggling to connect emotionally, while Bernie attempts softer, more intuitive engagement, emphasizing emotional communication and reconciliation. Youthful rebellion and alienation. The children's resistance, Kat's punishment, and Caleb's defeatism reflects the broader theme of fractured family bonds and personal struggles with identity, belonging, and self-worth. Art and memory as emotional bridges. Bernie's music reconnects her with Kat on an intimate level, illustrating how creative expression opens pathways for healing and understanding absent in their daily interactions. Hope amidst dysfunction. Despite tensions and conflicted emotions, the scene ends on a note of tenderness, highlighting the perseverance of love even within fractured family structures. Symbolic and narrative details. Bruce's firm grip on Caleb's chin symbolizes an attempt to reassert control and instill resilience, though his words are tempered with a hint of worry about perpetuating violence. Bernie's playful physicality and emotional openness offer contrast to Bruce's harshness, unveiling the delicate balancing act of parenting under pressure. Kat's rebellion and banishment from digital devices signify punishment, but also anxiety about growing independence and alienation. The video's emotional impact underscores narrative themes of absence, longing, and the power of art to reveal hidden truths. Conclusion. This scene is a poignant exploration of the complexities of family life within a context marked by trauma, pride, and survival. Williams offers a rich, textured portrayal of how love, discipline, rebellion, and vulnerability intersect, creating a moving portrait of human resilience amid ongoing hardship. The tender moments provide lifelines of hope and connection, suggesting that despite the cyclical nature of dysfunction, moments of grace remain possible. 10.2. This portion of the scene presents a complex and layered portrayal of family dynamics, identity struggles, and emotional undercurrents within the Edwards household, all framed during a tense car ride. It captures the nuances of a family grappling with legacy, mistrust, and personal challenges, highlighting the fractured yet enduring ties between parent and children. Atmosphere and interaction. The scene opens with an awkward silence broken by Bruce's perceptive awareness of cigarette smoke, signaling underlying secrets and tensions. His attempt to identify the source of the smell prompts playful banter from Aurora and guarded responses from Caleb and Roland, reflecting typical sibling interactions laced with suspicion and humor. Roland's nervousness and reluctance to admit guilt, juxtaposed with Caleb's teasing and Aurora's innocence, reinforce the varied ways each child negotiates authority, autonomy, and rebellion within the family structure. Bruce's role oscillates between stern patriarch and vulnerable father, evidenced by his efforts to assert control, deliver tough love, and suppress anxiety about his children's choices. The interplay of accusations, denials, and defensive retorts exposes unresolved tensions and the difficulty of parenting adolescent children amid past traumas. Themes of authority, identity, and legacy. Bruce's dialogues underscore his deep concern about the impact of family history and environment on his children's development. His admonitions serve as harsh lessons aimed at fostering resilience in a challenging social landscape, especially for his sons navigating complex racial and societal pressures. The references to past family trauma, including Bruce's own Uncle Rashawn's struggles and the traumatic incidents involving Kat, highlight the cyclical nature of pain and dysfunction in the Edwards lineage. Bruce's admission of keeping certain discussions off limits and shielding his children from the gangster life reflects a protective instinct complicated by years of experience and loss. The children's questions about their heritage, popularized by movies and rumors, reveal the tension between myth and reality, shaping their understanding of identity. Bruce's refusal to glorify or delve into these stories demonstrates his desire to break the cycle, even as the children's curiosity threatens to pull them closer to it. Sibling rivalry and emotional expression. Sibling interactions, especially Roland's smirk, Caleb's frustration, and Aurora's bright demeanor, balance harshness with humor and affection. Roland's provocation and Caleb's disgust illustrate a dynamic where the children both challenge and align with one another, revealing the complex emotional bonds within a conflicted family. Aurora's intermittent laughter and insightful comments contribute to tonal shifts throughout the scene, from tense to tender, and underscore her role as a perceptive and empathetic character within the family. Emotional depth and vulnerability. The scene ends on a vulnerable note, with Bruce's physical reactions, clenching the steering wheel, sweating, and teary eyes, portraying the emotional toll his role as father and protector takes on him. Aurora's reassurance and expression of love offer brief solace, humanizing Bruce and highlighting moments of genuine connection amid tension. Bruce's mixture of irritation, affection, and sorrow encapsulates the emotional complexity of a man torn between the desire to shield his children and the inevitability of their exposure to hardship. Symbolic and narrative significance. Cigarette smoke symbolizes hidden truths, impending revelations, and the children's tentative steps into adult behaviors. Car ride functions as a confined psychological space where family dynamics play out unfiltered, emphasizing the inescapability of their shared history. References to media. The children's knowledge of family lore through movies illustrates the modern mediation of heritage and trauma, contrasting with Bruce's lived reality. Bruce's physical gestures, his grip on the wheel, and teary eyes visualize internal conflict and frailty beneath his authoritative exterior. Overall analysis. This scene expertly blends humor, conflict, and tenderness to evoke the multidimensional nature of family life within the Edwards household. It lays bare the challenges of parenting in a legacy steeped in violence and survival, depicting the constant negotiation between protecting and preparing the next generation. Bruce's fluctuating authority and the children's diverse responses mirror broader themes of identity formation, rebellion, and resilience in The King's Omen. 10.3 This fraction of the scene poignantly captures the intersection of nostalgia, family tension, and fragile hope within the Edwards household. The emotional conversation between Katrina and Bernie reveals deep fractures in their relationships, especially in how they perceive and speak about Aurora, and highlights themes of lost dreams, blame, and the enduring power of music as a conduit for connection. Emotional and character dynamics. Katrina's tearful awe at her mother's singing reveals a rare moment of vulnerability and admiration, contrasting sharply with the harsh realities and resentments expressed in their dialogue. Bernie's sharing of her past experience, using song as an emotional outlet during a difficult breakup, adds layers of humanity and depth to her character, showing a side rarely seen amid the household strife. Katrina's youthful disbelief at the age of the song connects generational divides, injecting both humor and a sense of distance from the past struggles Bernie endured. This playful exchange underscores their complex mother-daughter dynamic, full of both affection and underlying tension. When Katrina blames Aurora for their hardships, the scene shifts into darker emotional terrain. Katrina's accusation of Aurora as a demon's child starkly contrasts with Bernie's protective response, revealing deep sibling rivalries and the psychological impact of Aurora's condition on family unity. This exchange echoes larger themes of scapegoating, fear, and the struggle to understand or accept difficult realities within dysfunctional families. Themes and symbolism. Music as emotional expression and healing. Bernie's voice and choice of a classic, soulful song symbolize a connection to the past, a mourning for lost possibilities, and a form of emotional catharsis. The upcoming idea of performing a duo through karaoke suggests a desire to bridge emotional gaps and find connection through shared creative expression. Blame and family conflict. Katrina's harsh judgment of Aurora reflects the toxic blame often projected within families experiencing trauma and hardship. The invocation of spiritual imagery. The demon's child from Satan expresses Katrina's internalization of fear, frustration, and alienation, illustrating how suffering fractures familial love. Dreams deferred and realities wait. Bernie's reflection on her own singing aspirations, tempered by realism about the music industry, mirrors the family's thwarted hopes for upward mobility and escape from their environment. Their lives, stuck in the middle of the damn hood, juxtapose dreams of fame and freedom with harsh socioeconomic constraints. Tone and dialogue. The scene's tone shifts fluidly between tender and tense, playful and accusatory. Humor and warmth soften raw pain, making the characters' vulnerabilities more accessible. Bernie's playful insistence on performing a karaoke duet dissolves momentary hostility, highlighting music as a balm and a gateway to reconciliation. Narrative function. This moment serves to deepen characterization, exposing Katrina's inner turmoil, Bernie's resilience, and the complicated sibling dynamics. It also foreshadows potential healing through shared experiences, even temporary ones, offering a sliver of hope amid ongoing struggles. 10.4. As we move forward, the scene is a richly textured exploration of family dynamics, emotional undercurrents, and the push and pull of resilience and vulnerability within the Edwards household. The contrasting moods and interactions among Bruce, his children, and Bernie showcase the complexity of love and tension woven through their lives. Detailed emotional and sensory dynamics. Bruce's presence at the science fair begins with a quiet act, finishing his cigarette, that metaphorically prepares him to confront the chaotic mix of hope, failure, and tension awaiting inside. His observations of Aurora's delight at the experiments cast her as the embodiment of innocent curiosity and joy in the midst of family struggles. Bruce's startled reaction to Roland's fascination with the flames reflects both concern and a recognition of how each child processes their environment differently. Caleb's sadness observed among friends deepens Bruce's emotional burden, highlighting his internal struggle as a protective father facing his children's challenges. Mr. Stewart's nervous approach, his rapid-fire mumbling apology and offer of assistance, juxtaposes sharply with his previous antagonism toward Bruce. This role reversal adds dramatic tension and enriches character development, leaving Bruce confused and hesitant. Stewart's subsequent friendly engagement with Caleb baffles both father and son, illustrating the unpredictable social dynamics the family must navigate and reinforcing the theme of distrust and guardedness. Bruce's strict reprimands to Roland for touching exhibits reinforce his role as disciplinarian, attempting to maintain order amid the unpredictable environment. His efforts to locate Aurora emphasize his protective instincts, as well as the challenge of attending to each child's needs simultaneously in a crowded, demanding setting. Symbolism and thematic resonance. Aurora's request to visit the art museum or science center reveals her yearning for beauty, knowledge, and a world beyond the physical and emotional confines of their current reality. Bruce's reassuring response, combined with his concern about her medication, signals his ongoing worry for her well-being and mental health. Aurora's waving at Grandma, though no one else sees her, introduces a spiritual and emotional dimension, suggesting the continuing presence and comfort of family members lost, but remembered. Bruce's mixture of concern and joy upon witnessing this moment reveals his human depth and longing for connection beyond the tangible world. The shift to the lively domestic scene where Bernie plays Ain't No Mountain High Enough and dances with Cat brings warmth and vitality, contrasting with earlier tension. This shared moment of music and dance illustrates how culture and family traditions serve as healing modalities, temporarily transcending hardships. Bernie's teasing and encouragement of Cat amid her imperfect singing create an atmosphere of acceptance and mutual support. Narrative and emotional function. This scene seamlessly melds moments of quiet vulnerability with communal joy, capturing the oscillating realities of the Edwards family. It emphasizes themes of protection, fractured innocence, spiritual connection, and the sustaining power of music and shared cultural identity. Bruce functions as both protector and emotional anchor, though his visible signs of strain suggest limits to his capacity. Aurora's innocence and depth provide a counterbalance, while the sibling dynamics introduce tension, rebellion, and resilience. Bernie's musical moment anchors the scene in tradition and warmth, offering a brief, essential reprieve from the broader narrative's darkness. Conclusion. Overall, this scene is a poignant microcosm of the Edwards family's ongoing struggle to find moments of peace and connection amid chaos. Its rich sensory details, shifting emotional tones, and careful character interactions embody the themes of trauma, love, survival, and hope central to the King's Omen. The scene captures families' complexities with both harsh realism and tender humanity. 10.5. As we continue to move forward, this moment of the scene powerfully encapsulates the themes of judgment, family legacy, and the struggle for honor within the pressures of community perception in the King's Omen. It vividly portrays Bruce's navigation through hostile social scrutiny, his children's challenges, and his own internal turmoil. Social confrontation and judgment. The mothers surrounding Bruce with probing questions and their fascination with his family convey the intense scrutiny placed on him as a representative of the Edwards lineage. Their mix of admiration and suspicion underscores how community judgments often intertwine with gossip and legacy, making Bruce both a symbol and a scapegoat. Bruce's sarcastic and guarded responses reveal his weariness and defensive posture, reflecting years of managing hostility rooted in family reputation and violent history. His control over the conversation, highlighted by wry remarks and a strategic retreat for seconds of ice cream, demonstrates his attempts to maintain dignity amid social pressure. Aurora's protective, heartfelt defense of Bruce stands out as a moment of familial pride and resilience, disrupting the hostility and reshaping the social dynamic. Her words humanize Bruce and reveal the profound love and loyalty underpinning the family, contrasting with external judgments. Caleb's science fair controversy. Caleb's unexpected victory and his visible shock amplify the tension, illustrating themes of integrity, reputation, and expectation. His refusal to claim credit for an experiment he did not create reflects a strong moral compass, despite external pressures. The accusations from peers and the silent disapproval of the crowd convey how past family reputation colors present perceptions, reinforcing the idea that legacy can both help and hinder individual progress. Caleb's friend Dennis's confrontation intensifies this, making Caleb confront the duality of admiration and mistrust he faces. Bruce's pragmatic insistence that Caleb accept the award despite internal conflict signifies parental protection, and the compromises often made to navigate social realities, a painful negotiation between idealism and survival. Bruce's emotional and psychological strain. Bruce's escalating anxiety is palpable in his physical responses, the clenched steering wheel, the nervous cigarette lighting, and the hesitant call to Lysandra. These actions symbolize his mounting stress, feelings of isolation, and the weight of responsibility he carries to safeguard his family against both internal and external threats. His reliance on Lysandra, presumably a trusted ally, signals a turning point or the need for intervention, underscoring the novel's themes of family alliances and survival strategies amid adversity. Thematic resonances. Legacy and stigma. The scene exposes how family history and social reputation shape personal identity and community interaction, emphasizing the burden of legacy on younger generations. Integrity versus survival. Caleb's dilemma highlights the conflict between personal honor and the pragmatic demands imposed by social and familial expectations. Parental protection and vulnerability. Bruce's demeanor shifts from sarcastic defiance to visible vulnerability, encapsulating the complex emotional labor involved in parenting under duress. Power of family loyalty. Aurora's defense and Bruce's decision reflect the sustaining power of familial bonds despite public scrutiny and internal struggles. Narrative importance. This scene deepens character development, illustrating the Edwards family's complicated negotiations with public perception, individual morality, and internal cohesion. It also advances plot tensions around Caleb's character development and Bruce's increasing entanglements in family and social conflicts. 10.6. The conversation within the Marcelin crime family vividly exposes the entangled power struggles, loyalty conflicts, and personal tensions within the Edwards Marcelin crime family, while also highlighting the deep emotional and ideological rift between Bruce and Lysandra. Family power dynamics and strategic calculations. Lysandra's meeting with her father and uncles in the restaurant serves as a microcosm of the fractured leadership of the Edwards Marcelin family. The conversation reveals divergent visions about authority, respect, and the direction of their criminal enterprise. While Cleotis advocates for strategic caution and adherence to the established order, Cecil's brashness and frustration expose underlying resentments about perceived injustices stemming from shifts in power. The reference to Two-Faced Tony as a critical threat reveals high stakes, espionage, and the constant danger posed by informants and betrayal within their network. The group's detailed assessment of the risks involved in targeting Tony reflects their pragmatic yet ruthless approach to surviving in a hostile underworld. Familial loyalties and personal ambitions. Fresh tensions surface over who truly belongs and deserves to lead, with Cecil emphasizing bloodline and upbringing as crucial to authority, while Lysandra counters with a more measured approach, warning of the dangers that come with leadership. This internal conflict illuminates the broader themes of legacy, belonging, and the price of power in a family long enmeshed in crime. Lysandra's role as a negotiator and strategist, often mediating between fiery personalities and guiding the family's direction, is underscored by her concern for maintaining cohesion amid chaos. Her phone call from Bruce and her hesitation to answer him show the toll of divided loyalties between family and personal ambitions. Bruce and Lysandra. Emotional and ideological rift. Bruce's impatient and angry calls to Lysandra contrast with her composed but firm stance, illustrating deep-seated emotional wounds and a clash of wills. Bruce's insistence on handling his family's problems independently clashes with Lysandra's understanding of the necessity of alliances and influence in their world. The dialogue is rife with frustration and mutual hurt. Bruce decries his pity party and rejects what he sees as her meddling, while Lysandra appeals to a pragmatic vision of power and survival, emphasizing how influence shapes their fates. This exchange highlights the underlying tension between personal pride and the harsh realities of their criminal ecosystem. Narrative and thematic significance. Power and control. The scene illustrates the precariousness of power within the Edwards-Marcelin family and how ambition and loyalty collide in their struggle for control. Family versus business. The complex intersection of familial relationships and organized crime generates conflicting loyalties, with personal grievances impacting business decisions. Isolation and division. Bruce's emotional isolation and defiance contrast with Lysandra's strategic perspective, emphasizing the personal costs of leadership and family duty. Legacy and identity. Questions of bloodline, belonging, and legitimacy underscore the character's motivations and exacerbate tensions within the family. Emotional texture and characterization. The character's sharp exchanges, subtle glances, and interruptions convey a charged atmosphere where respect is demanded but not always given. Lysandra's composed leadership stands against Cecil's emotional volatility, painting a vivid portrait of internal family dynamics under pressure. Bruce's final, defiant stance in the phone call reveals his deep pride and determination, as well as the emotional vulnerability masked by anger. Lysandra's devastation following the call is a poignant moment, indicating the personal sacrifices inherent in their lives. Conclusion. This scene is a pivotal exploration of leadership, loyalty, and fractured family ties within the King's Omen. It showcases how power struggles are inseparable from personal histories and emotions, and how survival demands both cunning and resilience. 10.7. This emotionally charged section of the scene highlights the deep fractures and tensions within the Edwards family, revealing themes of jealousy, estrangement, and the struggle for acceptance and connection. Family conflict and emotional distress. Aurora's exuberant announcement of Caleb's science fair victory acts as a catalyst, inadvertently igniting simmering resentment and emotional pain in Kat. Aurora's joy contrasts sharply with Kat's anger and feelings of abandonment and jealousy, specifically tied to Bernie's attention being diverted from her to Aurora. Kat's fierce outburst, "Get out," reveals her profound sense of displacement and emotional isolation within the family. Bernie's attempts to soothe Aurora and provide care are met with outright rejection by Kat, whose expression of frustration and hurt underscores her struggle for recognition and affection amidst the family's complex dynamics. Bernie's shattered demeanor at Kat's withdrawal poignantly captures a mother's pain at feeling disconnected from her child, illustrating the emotional toll of family dysfunction. Themes of estrangement and alienation. Kat's rejection of Bernie and her visible withdrawal symbolize a broader theme of familial estrangement, where unresolved conflicts and perceived favoritism fracture bonds. Her turning away and refusal to engage with her mother and sister convey a sense of loss and emotional exile. Caleb's tearful confession to Bernie, "All my friends hate me," echoes the loneliness and social alienation experienced within the family, highlighting his own battles with peer judgment and internalizing family shame linked to his perceived cheating. Bernie's comforting embrace of Caleb represents a moment of maternal solace and compassion, suggesting that despite the fractures, bonds of care and understanding persist beneath the surface turmoil. Symbolic and narrative significance. Aurora's innocent joy versus Kat's jealous rage. The clash between Aurora's uninhibited happiness and Kat's pain embodies internal family tensions around attention, love, and belonging. Bernie's maternal role. Bernie's dual role as nurturer and peacekeeper is stressed, showing both her strength and vulnerability in holding the family together. Caleb's isolation, his emotional struggle reflects the broader theme of identity and acceptance, showing how family dysfunction extends into social realms. Family dynamics. The scene underscores the cyclical nature of hurt and distance in family relationships, while also pointing toward possible paths of reconciliation through empathy and dialogue. Tone and emotional texture. The scene oscillates between moments of joy, rage, pain, and tenderness, creating a raw and realistic portrayal of family life burdened by trauma and misunderstanding. The contrast between vibrant singing and the sharpness of Kat's rejection amplifies the emotional stakes. Conclusion. This scene poignantly illustrates the Edwards family's struggles with love, jealousy, and connection. It reveals how unaddressed emotions can erupt into conflict while also suggesting the enduring presence of care beneath the surface. The depiction of these fraught relationships deepens the novel's exploration of family, identity, and resilience. 11. Bruce Edwards faces a racist mob. This scene vividly encapsulates the intricate, often tense dynamics of father-son bonding against the backdrop of systemic racism, community hostility, and familial survival in the King's Omen. It unfolds as a multi-layered narrative blending care, conflict, threat, and resilience. Overview of key events. The scene opens with Bruce and his son Roland engaged in a candid conversation inside the car. Bruce's repeated glances at Roland suggest a mix of concern and a desire to connect. Their dialogue about Roland taking a cigarette from Bruce's room reveals underlying tensions about rebellion, coping mechanisms, and the transmission of trauma across generations. Bruce's candid admission of his own youth marked by smoking and abuse by his great-uncle Rashawn conveys a history of hardship he prefers to shield his children from. His attempts to encourage Roland away from the dangers of the hood and toward better opportunities exemplify his role as protector and mentor. Suddenly, their private moment is shattered by a violent attack. A white vigilante mob surrounds Bruce's car, symbolizing rampant racial hostility in their environment. The mob's aggressive, racist rhetoric starkly contrasts with Bruce's calm, strategic demeanor as he confronts them. Bruce's invocation of his family name and the threat of retaliation underscore his layered identity as a man with complex ties to power and community. The confrontation ends with the mob reluctantly paying for damages under duress, while Bruce's exhaustion and private frustration surface in his vulnerable moment resting on the steering wheel. The scene closes on a pact between father and son to keep this traumatic event secret, reinforcing their fragile bond strengthened by shared hardship. Thematic analysis. Fatherhood and protection. Bruce's dialogue reveals the emotional labor of fatherhood under duress, balancing honesty, encouragement, and tough love to steer Roland clear of destructive paths. The scene probes the challenge of raising Black youth in hostile, racially charged environments. Intergenerational trauma. Discussions about Uncle Rashawn and Bruce's past highlight cycles of abuse and coping, illustrating how trauma perpetuates across generations and impels survival mechanisms like smoking. Racism and community violence. The white mob represents overt, violent racism and vigilantism, evoking historical and contemporary realities of racial terror. It symbolizes the constant threat Black families face, even in personal, familial moments. Power and influence. Bruce's bluff involving Lysandra and the threat of organized retaliation reflects a complex interplay of fear, respect, and unseen power dynamics operating in their world. Secrecy and trust. The private agreement between Bruce and Roland to conceal what transpired frames the theme of silence as protection, but also indicates the emotional weight of unspoken trauma. Symbolic and emotional detail. The cigarette acts as a symbol of rebellion, inherited trauma, and the difficult transition from childhood to adulthood. The broken windshield, a visceral marker of external conflict fracturing private family life. Bruce's exhaustion, his head on the steering wheel symbolizes the burden of life's unrelenting pressures and his vulnerability beneath a tough exterior. Roland's fear and Bruce's command. The contrast captures evolving father-son roles and the protective instincts formed in hostile environments. Conclusion. This scene is a powerful, richly layered depiction of survival, family, and identity amid racialized violence and systemic oppression. It advances character development and thematic exploration of resilience, legacy, and the complex navigation of power and vulnerability within the King's Omen.